Welcome back to that One Future CPA podcast. Today, we're diving into a topic that blends sports, business, and policy, the Luca Doncic trade, and what it really means about the Dallas Mavericks' future. On the surface, trading an NBA megastar is about basketball. But as we'll uncover today, this trade had just as much to do with money, ownership, and the gambling industry as the game of basketball itself. We'll break down how NBA teams typically handle these types of superstar trades, why the Mavericks seem to get less in return than expected, the financial motives of new ownership, and the impact of Texas gambling laws on this decision. Let's start by looking about how NBA franchise typically handled generational talents like Luca. So I guess let's begin with a bit of background about myself and the game of basketball and NBA. So I'm a huge Clippers fan. I started watching basketball sort of like the summer of 2007, 2008. And I was in El Paso, Texas, and we got regional sports networks when they used to be profitable and existed. And I was watching on like Fox Sports Southwest, and it was Oklahoma was playing, and Blake Griffin was on the team. And obviously, if anyone knows about Blake, if you're listening, if you're a big basketball fan yourself, you know that Blake was a really good athlete. And so he was pretty explosive, dunks and things like that. And so when he was drafted by the Los Angeles Clippers, I sort of followed along with him and became a big Clippers fan. And I was there during the Lob City years, the just uh, indescribable heartbreak of the Lob City years. I remember being like so excited during that San Antonio series when Chris Paul made that impossible shot over Tim Duncan's outstretched hands. You know, and just still never being able to get that chip. So yes, I've been a big basketball fan for a long time, and in fact, the Clippers have actually had a lot of these megastar trades, if you will. In fact, speaking about Chris Paul, was sort of the product of a canceled mega trade to the Lakers. I'm not going to get into all that because that's a lot there. But I think to say all that is to say a lot of Clippers fans loved Shea, who is killing it in OKC right now, and I too love Shea, and I thought to myself like, oh yes, finally we drafted a guy, who we can mold. He'll be our talent. He'll grow up in our system, we'll be super successful. And then he gets traded for, of course, Paul George. And that was a megastar trade that I think is um, pretty much a bust. But I mean, again, I'm not going to get into Clippers trades because I could be here all night talking about that. But what I will say is that NBA teams are not frequently trading megastars, but when they do it, they pretty much understand that it's an open process. Get as many teams as possible, drive up the price of said star, get as much as you can from that. So yeah, in the past decade, like this is not something that hasn't happened before. It's been pretty common, especially in the era of stars asking for their own trades. I mean, Kevin Durant is another example of that, whether you like it or not. Again, that's not me passing judgment. I'm just saying that's an example. Teams trading away elite talent usually receive a massive sort of haul for that. OKC got a lot. OKC got a lot for Paul George when the Clippers traded for him. The Brandon Ingram, the Lonzo Ball package that was part of what the Pelicans received for Anthony Davis, of course, a huge trade, right? The Nets for Kevin Durant. I mean, you could talk about Kevin Durant and a lot of sort of trades and free market movements here. But when we compare these deals to what happened with the Luca trade, there are obvious discrepancies. And I think that the main question, and I'm not rewriting, I'm not sort of creating something new here. I'm not reinventing the wheel when I say a lot of people were questioning, why did they settle for what they got? Why was this sort of just a closed process between the Mavericks and the Lakers? What is behind this trade? It can't just be about conditioning and physicality. There has to be something more to it. And I think when you start to dig deeper into some of the things that have happened around the Dallas Mavericks ownership over the last couple of years, this trade starts to make, if not basketball sense, it certainly starts to make business and money sense. So I think now let's get into the details of the trade and why it has people really scratching their heads. So I'm going to pull this up. Obviously, I'm going to read it because I didn't remember this off the top of my head. But um, in the trade, the Lakers received Luca, Maxi Kleber, and Markieff Morris from the Mavericks, who announced the trade that Sunday morning. And Dallas received Davis, Max Christie, and the Lakers 2029 first round pick. Now, if you're saying who's Max Christie, it's okay. I had to look him up. And that's fair. Look, there's a lot. This guy is probably super talented. There's like less than 500 spots in the NBA. So to be an NBA player involved in a trade at all means that you are immensely talented, right? So Max Christie is averaging 9 points, 3 rebounds, 1.7 assists, shooting 46% from the floor. We can look at Anthony Davis as well to see exactly what he's doing. 25 points, 12 rebounds, 3 assists, 52%, 53% from the floor. And that's not surprising. And I think that the president from the Mavericks organization was indicating that they're looking for defense and line that people have been hearing around the game forever, that defense wins championships, and the opportunity to bring in an all defensive former defensive player of the year like Anthony Davis into the rotation obviously is something that you don't want to pass up. However, it seems that this is pretty underwhelming, and we're going to do some comparing and contrasting here. So we asked, what did OKC get for Paul George when they were involved in the trade with the Los Angeles Clippers? The Clippers sent Shea Gilgeous-Alexander. If you don't know who that is, Shea, big. Talk about the future of the league for sure. Shea up there with Jason Tatum. The Clippers sent Shea, Danilo Gallinari, five five first round picks and four first round pick swaps in exchange for a Paul George. No commentary. In exchange for Paul George. So obviously that's pretty lopsided. Now, I think again, pause, sort of caveat here. That deal was sort of also in so strong to show, exactly the dedication that the Clippers had to creating that all-star pair, because that same night or very close to that signing, Kawhi Davis signed with the Los Angeles Clippers. So I think that if you asked Steve Ballmer and Frank Lawrence and the front office of the LA Clippers if they regretted what they did in the trade for Paul George, I think not. The NBA is predicated on stars. Stars win championships, and you have to do what you can to get the stars. So, and then the next sort of trade that is sort of floated out there in comparison is the Nets and Kevin Durant. The Nets received Mikal Bridges, Jay Crowder, Cameron Johnson, a 2023 first round pick that ended up being a Noah Clowney, a 2025 first round pick, a 2027 first round pick, a 2028 first round swap, a 2029 first round pick, and the Suns received Kevin Durant and TJ Warren. Now, I mean, it's Kevin Durant, generational talent. What do they call him? The Slim Reaper. Also went to college in Texas, so always going to be a Kevin Durant fan for sure. But you could just see here that these trades are pretty lopsided when you compare what the Dallas Mavericks received. So the question becomes, was this truly the best offer that the Dallas Mavericks could have received for their generational star? Um, or were there other motivations behind it? You do not have to be a future CPA. You do not have to be a business student. You don't have to be a sports business major to really sort of understand that there must be something else at play here. There must be some other reason why the Dallas Mavericks decided to pull the trigger on this trade without an open market bidding. This really leads us to understanding that ownership shift. right? Like that sell of the team by Mark Cuban to these new owners. And the question is now, who is calling the shots in Dallas and what is their ultimate motivation? So I think this is where the story becomes interesting from a business student aspect, from a future CPA aspect, because here's where big numbers and secret motivations start to come into play. So the Mavericks were recently sold to a new ownership group. Okay, this ownership group is led by the Adelson and the Dumont families, major players in the casino industry, also major players in politics and in political contributions. However, if you have money, you're probably a big player in political contributions. That's kind of how the system works now. Thank you so much. Miriam Adelson, Miriam Adelson, who is the widow of casino magnate Sheldon Adelson, is the majority stakeholder, right? Her family controls Las Vegas Sands, one of the biggest casino operators in the world. My brother loves Las Vegas. One of my friends actually just moved to Las Vegas for work. I was actually looking at Las Vegas also as a grad school option because they have a good master's of accounting program as well. So, but full disclosure, I've never really been a casino guy or a gambling guy. Anxiety would not allow me to be a gambler. I don't know how you guys are able to be gamblers and put your money on the line like that. And, you know, 21's like, hit me. And I'm like, it's violent. The ball in the roulette is just spinning and spinning and spinning. The slot machines are just screaming overstimulation. So, not a big gambler, but I have heard of this family because I am big into politics. So, that is a family that I am familiar with. The other part of that ownership group is led by Patrick Dumont, one of her son in laws, who serves as the company's president and COO. His involvement in the Mavericks is seen as part of the broader strategy to expand the Sands empire, right? Their involvement in sports ownership isn't just about winning basketball games. It's about positioning themselves to capitalize on gambling expansion in Texas, which I just have to say is very funny because I'm a Texan, right? Born in Hampton, Virginia, but raised in El Paso, Texas, proudly raised in El Paso, Texas. And gambling and legalization of said gambling has been a conversation for as long as I could, read and listen to the news. KFox 14 was my news of channel, my news of choice. But when I was in Texas, in El Paso, they were always speaking about trying to get gambling legalized, mostly because it's not from a moral standpoint. I just think that there was like business opportunities for gambling in Texas that some of the legislature were trying to take advantage of. So it's not surprising that this family is starting to look to that market. Dallas, excuse me, and Texas at large have historically resisted gambling legislation, but some believe that the political tide is shifting, mostly because of um, results of federal elections shifting. They believe that they may be able to get what they're looking for in Texas, which they have not been able to do as I just mentioned for decades. Okay. The Mavericks owners are really betting, really, really, really betting that Texas is going to change their stance, and that by them being involved in this enterprise, that it will shift sort of the idea here. So the idea is like, we're professional, casino operators. This is not some ragtag group. It's not Atlantic City, if you will. This is a professional operation. We want to bring a professional operation to Texas, but uh, what are the chances of Texas actually legalizing casinos and sports betting? Small. Uh, Not because I've done a lot of research, not because I've done a lot of reading, but because one, Texas has this weird calendar where the legislature only meets like once every 2 years. So generally speaking, they have to cram a lot of stuff into um, those sessions that only happen once every 2 years. And generally speaking, I don't think that that's going to be one of the top priorities for the Speaker of the House, who's Republican, but operates a little bit differently than the Speaker of the House on the federal level. Second, it's been tried before. I also think that there will be considerations about tribal ownerships of casinos because I think that that's, not to get too deep into sort of the meanings behind that, but I think that's one of the reasons why Texas hasn't legalized gambling so far because it becomes then a sticky question of, you know, um, tribal ownership of casinos on their land and what that means and taxation and so forth and so on. And being in from El Paso, there was a very large tribal uh, casino operation near El Paso that was always going back and forth with the state government about what was or wasn't legal, and what could or couldn't be operated there. It was a heck of a place. Speaking Rock, it was a heck of a place. I'm sure it still is. It's not like it's closed. I'm talking about it past tense to me, but yeah, heck of a place to be. I remember I went there one time. I had like the largest margarita, the most amazing fajitas. I did not drive home. Someone drove me home. It was amazing. But again, yeah, I think that the family is betting that there could be changes in their opportunity to build this casino here in Dallas, but I, I'm doubtful that they'll be able to reach their objective, especially by trashing this team's chance of actually being competitive in the Western Conference and the NBA as a whole. So, as we mentioned, Texas has some of the strictest gambling laws in the country, but many believe, just like the Mavericks ownership group does, that this will change. Several bills have been introduced in recent years to legalize casinos and sports betting. And with this new ownership group lobbying hard with very deep pockets, the pressure is mounting. The impact of legalization would be massive, billions of dollars, tons of jobs, and of course, a transformation of the sports landscape. The Mavericks trade of Luca might make more sense when you consider the long term financial incentives at play. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but here is my conspiracy theory. If you take the team that's in Dallas and you have Luca and you were, what, 1 or 2 years out of the NBA final, Luca's a generational talent. He's only going to get better. And by a lot of previous stars' trajectory, he's not even in his prime yet. And there have been questions about conditioning. I mean, the eye test tells you that he could probably be in better shape, but is he in such bad shape that you trade him away for, you know, and a shaky Anthony Davis? I don't think so. And I could say shaky because he's literally injured as we speak. Um, so I think that the question here is that, what do they gain by trading Luca away? Well, you gain the opportunity to crash the team, right? The NBA is not going to get behind the potential relocation of a franchise that's performing well. So if the Mavericks were performing well with Luca at its center, then the question of relocation would be pretty hard. And also, the citizens of Dallas wouldn't want, the team to be relocated. They would vote against that. There would be bad will. Other owners wouldn't want to approve that. But what if you are crashing the team? What if you institute a trade that's so terrible that you have longtime fans burning jerseys and co-opting Lakers ones? What if you are able to trade away your star and you tank your performance for years? What if the threat of saying, "Hey, we could easily take this team and move it to Vegas unless you approve the things that we're wanting to get done here in Dallas and in Texas around gambling and sports betting, then we're going to hightail ourselves to Vegas, or we already have, right, an operation." So I think that if you just sort of suspend disbelief for a bit here and you think a little bit outside of the box, you could see that the play around the Luca trade is less about basketball and more about money. I think the best way to sum it up is to say that the Luca trade is more about US green and less about Mavericks blue. And so the ownership here is not making decisions that seem to be in the best interest of the team, the fan base, the city, and Maverick supporters around the country and the world, but rather what's in the best interest of their wallets and their pockets. This also brings into question the idea of sports and what it means to be a fan of a sports team, what it means to be attached to your star, your player, your team, your coach, and the harsh realities of when fandom meets business. And that does it for the sixth episode of that One Future CPA podcast. If you liked what you heard, please look at our previous episodes. There are conversations on the impact of private equity in the accounting industry, the impact of accounting principles on the decline of the middle class, as well as a conversation about the future of technology and how it must be integrated into the accounting education that we're all getting at our universities. The next episode, we will be speaking about NIL deals and college football in particular, and the impact of money in sports on the collegiate level. Again, please like, listen, subscribe, and share. Comment if you like what we're talking about. If you happen to be a Dallas Mavericks fan, comment what you might think is the reason why Luca was traded away for so little. But again, hope to hear you next time. Hope to hear you. I hope you can hear me next time, and I hope to have you listen to the next episode. We'll dive into those topics and more on the next episode. Once again, be sure to subscribe and stay tuned. Until next time, have a great day.